Welcome back to CIA Declassified. March 23, 1983, President Ronald Reagan takes to the airwaves to announce a vision that sounds like science fiction, a space-based shield that could intercept and destroy Soviet nuclear missiles before they ever reached American soil. The media called it Star Wars, critics called it dangerous hallucination, but inside the walls of the Kremlin, the mood was one of cold, calculated terror. The CIA was watching. Through document number CIA RDP88B00443R001804360010-3, we now have the window into what the agency saw. A Soviet leadership convinced that the Americans were on the verge of a breakthrough that would change the balance of power forever. The CIA didn't just observe this fear, they weaponized it. The declassified briefings show the CIA's Directorate of Intelligence was meticulously tracking the Soviet response to SDI. The findings were startling. A quote from a CIA intelligence memorandum: "The Soviet leadership perceives SDI not merely as a defensive shield, but as a precursor to a space-based first strike capability. Their concern is rooted in deep-seated respect for American microelectronics and computer processing fields, where they acknowledge they cannot currently compete." End quote. The CIA reported that the Soviets were redirecting billions of rubles from their struggling civilian economy into anti-SDI research. They were terrified that American exotic physics, X-ray lasers, railguns, and neutral particle beams were already in the prototype stage. A quote from an internal briefing to the Director of Central Intelligence: "Soviet scientists believe we have solved the discrimination problem, the ability to distinguish between real warheads and decoys in mid-flight. Our task is to ensure they continue to believe this regardless of the actual status of our lab test." End quote. This was technical bluffing on a global scale. The CIA facilitated the leak of sensitive but exaggerated data through double agents and insecure channels, knowing the KGB would scramble to steal it. The agency tracked Soviet attempts to steal American computer code for battle management systems. What the Soviets didn't know was that some of the code they worked so hard to liberate was intentionally flawed or designed to require hardware the Soviets simply couldn't manufacture. There is a high degree of speculation that Project Timberwind, a secret nuclear rocket program, was used as a prop. Historians theorize that the CIA allowed the Soviets to see accidental satellite imagery of massive test stands, leading the Kremlin to believe the U.S. had mastered space-based power generation, when in reality the projects were years away from viability. According to the declassified Red Stack files, the agency orchestrated a series of fake laboratory successes that were leaked via the Line X network, a dedicated Soviet intelligence unit for stealing Western technology. By planting documents that suggested American mirrors for chemical lasers had reached 99.9% reflectivity, a near impossible feat at the time, the CIA forced Soviet physicists to spend 5 years trying to replicate a result that didn't exist, effectively jamming their own domestic laser research. In the realm of silicon sabotage, there is lingering speculation that the CIA's Operation Cuckoo's Egg involved more than just tracking hackers. Some analysts believe the agency intentionally allowed the KGB to procure specialized CDA/CAM software for chip design that contained a hidden algorithmic bias. The bias supposedly ensured that any microprocessor designed using the software would fail under the high radiation environments of outer space, rendering the entire Soviet Star Wars counter-initiative useless at the moment of launch. A quote from the memorandum for the president on the Gorbachev dilemma: "Gorbachev is trapped between the military-industrial complex's demand for a total response to SDI and the economic reality of a collapsing grain harvest. He is searching for a grand bargain to eliminate all nuclear weapons specifically because he knows he cannot build the shield. We must maintain the fiction of our progress to keep him at the table." End quote. Document number CIA RDP88B00443 highlights the psychological paralysis of General Secretary. He reportedly told his inner circle that SDI was a mortal threat that could force the USSR into a technological race it was destined to lose. Speculation exists that the CIA utilized acoustic projection during high-level summits to influence Soviet negotiators. The theory is that the agency used high-frequency emitters to induce headaches and irritability in Soviet delegates whenever the topic of SDI was raised, subtly reinforcing the stress associated with the program. A quote from the CIA Office of Soviet Analysis: "The Kremlin is increasingly reacting to SDI as a magic bullet technology. They are ignoring the inherent physical limitations of the system and are instead reacting to the American will to innovate. The psychological leverage is more valuable than any working laser." End quote. Researchers speculate that the Delta-18 satellite launch in 1986 was partially a CIA-managed magic show. While it was a genuine test of sensor technology, it is speculated that the successful interception of a target was aided by pre-placed beacons on the target rocket, creating an illusion of precision that sent Soviet analysts into a panic-driven research frenzy. The CIA's Project Farewell dossier revealed that the Soviets were so desperate for SDI-related tech that they were buying American-made reject microchips from the black market, unaware the CIA had helped facilitate the sales of hardware with built-in Trojan horse defects. Many analysts believe the Great Redaction in the 1988 briefing logs cover the CIA's infiltration of the Soviet Skrebet program, their own version of Star Wars. It is speculated that the CIA successfully planted logic bombs in Soviet supercomputers used for SDI simulations, causing them to consistently overestimate American capabilities and underestimate their own. The most heavily redacted sections of this document is the Propaganda Coordination Annex section. There is heavy speculation that these pages detail the agency's recruitment of American scientists to purposefully give pessimistic interviews to the press. The theory is that by having some scientists call SDI impossible, it made the classified breakthroughs seem more real to the KGB. If the Americans were arguing about it, it meant there was something worth arguing over. Further speculation suggests that the redactions hide the economic collapse trigger. This theory posits that the CIA had a specific ruble-to-dollar metric for how much the Soviets would have to spend to match a fake American breakthrough, and they intentionally timed briefings to force the Soviets into bankrupting their own healthcare and agricultural sectors. Was the Star Wars bluff a success? In terms of ending the Cold War, it was perhaps the most successful psychological operation in history. While the hardware for a space-based shield never fully materialized in the 80s, the belief in it forced the Soviet Union into a spinning spiral they could not sustain. By 1987, Gorbachev was a direct response to the economic exhaustion caused by the arms race. The CIA briefings confirmed that the fear of the high ground was the primary lever used to force the Soviets to the negotiating table for the INF Treaty. Even the bluffs led to reality. Technological breakthroughs, adaptive optics, the mere technology research for space lasers now allows modern telescopes to see through atmospheric distortion. Miniaturized sensors, the Brilliant Pebbles project led to the miniaturization of seekers used in modern interceptor missiles, and supercomputing, the massive processing power required for SDI battle management, pushed the development of parallel processing and high-speed networking. The Star Wars briefings show us that the most powerful weapon in the CIA's arsenal isn't a laser or a satellite, it's the enemy's own imagination. By feeding the Kremlin's fear of a technological ghost, the agency helped bring down an empire without firing a single shot into space. Next time on CIA Declassified, we move from the vacuum of space to the muddy swamps of biological intelligence. We examine Project ST Gateway, also known as the Seismic Toad. Based on Declassified Directorate of Science and Technology logs, we explore the agency's attempt to use the natural hypersensitivity of amphibians to detect underground nuclear testing. We'll look at the bizarre toad wiring experiments and how the CIA tried to turn nature's humblest creatures into a global seismic early warning system. Join us for the Amphibian Spy. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.